Hello, welcome back to my channel. My name is Christine. I like to read dark and disturbing things, and this is going to be my mid-April wrap-up. As I'm sure you know, we are in the middle of old school April, and yesterday was April 15th. So I thought it was a good chance to stop what I was doing, go over all the books that I've read so far so I don't have to go so crazy at the end of the month trying to remember everything. I've been trying to read a lot for this readathon, or a lot for me, I should say. And so far I've read 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So far I have read 6 books. 2 of them were a little bit shorter. So, well, a couple were shorter and some were like middle grade books. So let's just go over what I've read so far. I felt like it was like a big responsibility to pick my first book for old school April, and I thought this was the perfect pick. This was actually Kat from Kat's Novel Adventures host recommendation, or one of hers, and this is The Hellbound Heart by Clive Barker. I've been wanting to read more Clive Barker. I did read the first books of Blood and absolutely loved it, and I really wanted to get into more of his stuff, so I thought this was the perfect way to start the month, and it really was. I did watch Hellraiser for the first time just last year. It was just, for whatever reason, a movie franchise that I never followed when I was younger. And this is that movie I don't know if this came first. I think this came first. But this follows the movie pretty closely, with the exception of one of the characters kind of plays a different role in the movie. But in the end, it doesn't like make a huge difference in the book. If you're not familiar, this is about, oh, where do I even start with this? This is about somebody who finds this puzzle box and somehow opens it up and transports him into like another reality. Later on, this guy's brother and his wife move into their house that he owned, or they owned together, something like that. And somehow the wife in the situation is trying to talk about this without spoilers, but is kind of tasked with bringing this guy back from this alternate reality. She doesn't really know how he got there. She just knows that she wants to help him. I mean, this is a short book, so I don't want to say too much. I'm sure most people have already watched this movie. I did watch the movie first, which I usually like to go into things blind and read something before I watch it. But in this case, I think it actually helped me picture a lot of the craziness that goes on in this movie and this book. And I needed all the help I could get. I really wish that this went a bit more into detail, especially about this alternate reality and these Cenobites that live there. I wanted to know more. So my only problem with this book was that it was too short and that it could have used a lot more detail that went beyond the movie. So I gave this one 4 out of 5 stars. I really liked it, but I wanted more. And I guess that's not like the worst problem to have. The second book I read is a favorite of another booktuber and friend that I'm sure you guys all know. This is Gnelfs by Sydney Williams, and that person is Kelsey from Slime and Slashers. She has been talking about this book for, I think, like the past year, and I was really excited when they did a reprint and came out with this on, with this cover. So they reprinted it with the old school cover. So this is about a young girl named Heaven who is almost 5 years old, and she's really into this show called Gnelfs. Gnelfs are, I mean, I picture kind of Smurfs in my mind, but Gnelfs stands for the combination of gnome and elves. And there's all kinds of stuff. There's like a TV show, there's movies, there's books, there's, you know, all the things, just like Smurfs. However, one day she starts to see them in real life, and they're not very nice. They're saying horrible things about her mom and just being mean to her and hurting her. And the mom has to kind of figure out what the heck is going on. And she thinks that it has to do with the fact that she's recently split from the father in the situation. And she thinks that maybe this is her way of kind of acting out, or her kind of mental break trying to deal with her father not being around right now. The first part of this book, there's a lot of talk about between two women that are really just over analyzing this child's behavior because they're worried about her. But if you can make it through that, then the book starts to pick up a bit more and there's a lot more action. Remember when I said I like to go into things kind of blind? I think that would have helped me in this situation with this book because I felt like I had already heard the good parts of this book. And so in that case, I didn't really have the same reaction as to someone who maybe just picks this up on their own and is experiencing it with no preconceived notions of what, or expectations of what they expect from this book. I think that was the downfall of this one for me. And I really hate to say it because Kelsey already thinks I hate everything and I'm too mean on all the books, but this one was just okay for me. I had expected these Gnelfs to be kind of like gremlins, and I thought they were going to be like causing all kinds of chaos throughout the book, and they do for a while, but then it kind of turns into something else where we are figuring out where they really came from and how to stop them. I wanted to see more Gnelf hijinks. I wanted to see them have a lot of fun playing around with like driving Heaven crazy and the mom crazy, and I just wanted more Gnelfs and less of the backstory and the whole rest of it of where it went. So for me, that is where it fell flat. I really just wanted more of the action that I knew was in this book. I just needed more. So for that reason, I have to give this one a 3 out of 5 stars. I'm sorry, Kelsey. Then the next book I read was a book that's been on my Kindle for probably about a year, and that is Head Like a Hole by Andrew Van Wey. This was not on my TBR, but I've been pulling books off my Kindle because at night my husband's like, no, turn out the light. He's like going to sleep so early, and he's just been tired. So I've been trying to be nice and not turn on my reading light to let him sleep. So I've been using my Kindle, and one time in the middle of the night I had to start a new book, and I'm like, oh, Head Like a Hole, that would be perfect for old school April. And it absolutely was. This is a book that is set in the 90s and somewhere in the New England area where there is a fisherman who pulls up one of his crab traps one day and finds something more than he bargained for. He finds parts of a dead body, specifically a head, and this head seems like it's still alive somehow. It starts talking to him and telling him to do things that he wouldn't normally do. And we kind of see this from a few different perspectives. We see it from the fisherman's perspective at times, and then from police officers, detectives' perspective at times, who's trying to figure out what the heck is going on, why this fisherman is doing things that he wouldn't normally do. He's causing some trouble. And then we also are going from the point of view of this group of friends that used to know each other when they went to boarding school together a few years ago, and then something happened, something pretty traumatic, and they just stopped talking and kind of all went their separate ways, went to college, went to do whatever. So we're following from their perspective as well. And it's alluded to that whatever happened in this past has something to do with this talking head. So they are connected in some way, and we're going to find out eventually how it all comes together. I really loved this book. I'm so glad that I picked it up. I don't know why I waited so long, but it does nostalgia to me perfectly. I think that a lot of times when people try to go to this nostalgic place in books, they go way overboard by just dumping the names of songs and movies and, pop culture references, and it's like done too much. But in this case, it is enough to set the tone for where we are in the 90s and just the atmosphere of what's going on. It's not doing it to cash in on that nostalgia. It's genuinely using that from a genuine place. And I could tell that the author is probably around the same age as I am, maybe off by a few years, but that we probably were in high school around the same time, because high school is like the time where you tend to remember shows and books and movies and songs, especially songs that just kind of stick with you for the rest of your life. There's actually like a known phenomenon that the music that you listen to in that time period does something different to your brain. And that is why we often get stuck listening to those same songs or those same genres much later in life. Anyway, that has nothing to do with the book, but I had such a good time. I felt like this book was unlike anything I've ever read, and it was weird, but like the perfect amount of weird. It wasn't so weird that it was like way too cosmic for my little bird brain to understand, which sometimes happens. To me, it was the perfect amount of weird with the perfect explanation to me that I could handle, and I just had a good time. I really enjoyed this book. I don't know if I want to give it a 4 or 4.5, but I really like this book and I highly recommend it. Next, I read a couple of middle grade books for Old School April. I started off with the Creepover series. This is the first one in the series. This is called Creepover Truth or Dare. And you could see, if there was not so much shine, that the girls are having a slumber party, which was a huge thing when I was that age. And we have a girl in the window. I thought originally that that was like a Medusa-like character, but that's just a girl with really long red hair. This was a fun time. It was obviously not written for my age group, but I thought it was a sweet, cute book with some kind of spooky elements to it. I didn't find it to be super scary. The books do put a creepometer at the back where it can rate it from 1 to 5, and it gave it a 3. And yeah, I guess a 3 on the scale of a like 8-year-old girl, possibly. I feel like at that age, I probably was reading stuff that was a lot scarier, but it was enough to be kind of creepy, and it was fun. And I liked its focus on the friendship between these girls. It was just a fun time. I'm not going to rate these because they are not, this was not written for me. It just, you know, I am not the demographic for this, so I don't want to rate it. The other one I read was a Goosebumps. And this, you know what? I ended up actually listening to this on YouTube. Like, I think all of the Goosebumps books are on there where you can listen to them audibly. So I did that while I was doing some crafting. And this one is called Stay Out of the Basement. And we've got this creepy plant hand coming out of the basement. This one is about a family with a brother and a sister. And the mom is away for some kind of work thing. And the dad has recently gotten fired from his job at the lab. And he has all of his like lab equipment and experiments going on in the basement, and he's always telling them like, stay out of the basement. And of course they never stay out of the basement. In fact, they find every reason to go into the basement, and then even more reasons to go into the basement because they don't listen. So dad's got some crazy kind of plants going on down there, and they make weird noises at times, and I'm going to leave it at that. There is some kind of creepiness growing in the basement. I thought this was a fun time, and this is definitely spookier and creepier and scarier than the Creepover series, at least from the one that I read. And I like how it ended on kind of like a note of it's all over, or is it? And lastly, I read for the first time The Exorcist. One of the prompts was to pick a book that was written in the decade that you were born. I was born in the late 70s, and this was written in the early 70s, so I picked The Exorcist by William Peter Blatty. This is one where I have seen the movie before reading the book. It has been a very long time. I know I saw the original long time ago, probably when I was a kid or a teenager. And then I feel like in my early 20s that they remade it, or they added scenes to it, or they re-released it, something to that effect. I can't remember exactly. And I also watched that. I want to say it was the original with added scenes, but I could be wrong. That said, I don't remember the exact details super well, with the exception of a few scenes that we all like that just live in your brain, right? Also, I ended up listening to this, and it was narrated by the author, who did an amazing job doing the voices, like not just the voice of the demon, which was excellent, but even just the way he talks in conversation. It is not like he's reading a conversation. It sounds like you're actually hearing a conversation between people, if that makes sense. Just the inflections are perfect, and you could tell that he was the author because he knew exactly how he wanted them to sound. And even when the dialogue wasn't super important, it just sounded like real people. If you are unaware, this is a book about a young girl who starts acting very out of character and very rapidly declines in health and has to be like tied to her bed because she could hurt others or hurt herself with whatever episode she's having. And the book is called The Exorcist. So in the end, I think we all know that an exorcist is going to take place. I don't think that's spoiling anything. The thing about this book that did surprise me was how much he actually included science and psychology in this book. I could be totally wrong, and it's because it's been so long, but my memory did not remember the movie really going into trying to find any reasonable explanation as to what's going on. And I would say that that happens in the majority of this book. The majority of this book is really focusing on the psychology of this girl and trying to explain how this could be happening without supernatural like intervention. And even though we have a priest that's coming to see this girl and try to help her out, he isn't there the whole time expecting there to be a demon taking over her body. He's also a psychologist, and he's trying to figure out how to help her psychologically, and how to help her body while she's going through all this, like how he can keep her heart stable and how he can do all these things. He really does not believe that anything supernatural is going on, and he is trying his best to use that as a last resort, even though the mother really wants him to perform this exorcism, which it's fully recognized in this book that usually, even if that's done, it's done on a psychological level to make that person feel like you are exorcising them of a demon that they feel like they have. I think that's important to say because that was not my takeaway from the movie, but I also saw it when I was really young, and I probably did not pick up on all that stuff. I thought that we just jumped straight into, yes, you are possessed by a demon, the devil, you must be exorcised. So I really enjoyed all of that because I've already seen the movie, and I think that probably everyone at this point, even if you haven't seen the movie, have seen scenes from it enough to know what it's about and to know like some of the major scenes that are in this book. So in that respect, I did not get to go into this with a clean slate. I already kind of knew what was going to happen. And I do think that some of those scenes are done a lot more in depth in here. Like one scene in particular that I do know is in the movie, but I think it is a lot more explicit in the book, and it is also goes a little bit further. And I was just like, holy shit, like even though I knew what was going to happen, I still found it to be kind of shocking, especially considering this was written in the early 70s. So I think that if I had read this knowing nothing about anything, this would have been a 5-star read for me. But because I kind of already knew, you know, it takes away some of the mystique. It takes away some of the just like the magic of it. And so for that reason, I'm going to give it 4 out of 5 stars, which means I really, really enjoyed it. It just didn't blow my mind because I already kind of knew what was going to happen. That said, before the month is over, I would like to rewatch the movie and kind of compare them and see how I feel about it at that point. All right, so that is everything that I have read and finished so far this month. I am almost done with another book that'll be in my monthly wrap up as well as everything I've read in the month of April. I just wanted to get some of these out of the way so that these videos aren't too long at the end of the month. and because my memory kind of sucks. If I had to pick a favorite of what I read so far this month, I think it's going to be Head Like a Hole with The Exorcist close behind. Head Like a Hole to me was just fresh and new, and I really enjoyed it. I went in knowing absolutely nothing except for the amazing cover art here, and knowing that it was set in the 90s. That was all I knew about it, and I just had a really good time with it. Let me know down below, what is your favorite book that you've read so far this month? And for everyone that's participating in Old School April, I hope you have an excellent reading month, but a little extra if you're a purple parrot. Caw-caw, caw-caw. If you've made it this far in the video, leave me a mushroom emoji down below. I feel like I said that last time, but you know, I keep reading books with mushrooms in it, so what can I say? Thank you guys so much for watching, and as always, stay spooky.